You know, we live in a culture absolutely obsessed with money. We scroll through Instagram or TikTok, and what do we see? We see the loud money. We see the leased Lamborghinis, the rented mansions in the Hollywood Hills, the watches that cost more than a 4-year college degree. It's flashy, it's screaming for attention, but if you really pay attention, if you look past the noise, there is another level. A level that sits quietly in the background, moving the chess pieces of the global economy while everyone else is playing checkers. We are talking about a level of wealth that, frankly, breaks your brain a little bit if you stare at it too long. I'm talking about bottles of wine, fermented grape juice, that sell for a cool $1 million at auction. Can you imagine drinking the equivalent of a luxury home in a few gulps? Or hotels tucked away in the snowy peaks of the Swiss Alps, where a single night costs $50,000. That's more than the average American makes in an entire year, gone in 8 hours of sleep. And then you have the banks. I'm not talking about the Wells Fargo or Chase branch down the street where you fight with the ATM machine. I'm talking about the institutions that loan money to entire sovereign nations, the kind of banks that governments call when they run out of cash. Now, usually, when you start describing this level of influence and assets, the internet starts to whisper one specific name. You've probably heard it. It starts with an R, the Rothschilds. And I know, I can already hear the comments section typing away furiously. The second you say Rothschild, half the world puts on a tinfoil hat. They start talking about the Illuminati, secret societies, guys in hooded robes controlling the weather, or lizards wearing human suits. It turns into a sci-fi movie, but stick with me for a second. We aren't going down the conspiracy rabbit hole today. We aren't talking about fiction. We are going to talk about something way more interesting, the actual historical reality. Because the truth, it's infinitely more impressive than the made-up stuff. The fiction is just a distraction from the real secret. To understand the secret, we have to rewind the tape. We need to go way, way back. We need to talk about the man who started it all, Meyer Amschel Rothschild. Now, if you saw this guy walking down the street in Frankfurt in the 18th century, you wouldn't think, master of the universe. You wouldn't tremble in fear. You'd probably just walk right past him, or maybe even step away to avoid the dust on his old coat. He wasn't born in a palace. He didn't inherit a kingdom or a trust fund. He was born in the Judengasse, the Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt. And let's be real about what a ghetto meant back then in Europe. This wasn't just a tough neighborhood. It was a prison without bars. It was cramped. It smelled terrible. Opportunities were zero. People were legally restricted from doing almost anything meaningful. Meyer started out living in a house with 30 other people. 30, just imagine the noise, the chaos, the lack of privacy. To make a living, he was selling old coins and antiques, just junk, basically. Trinkets he could scavenge and resell to collectors. He was a hustler in the truest sense of the word, scraping by on the margins of society. So, the million-dollar question, the one that nobody seems to ask while they are busy making up conspiracy theories about space lasers, is this: how? How do you go from selling dusty coins in a cramped, smelly alleyway to establishing a financial dynasty that shapes the modern world for 3 centuries? How does a family go from zero, literally zero, to producing wine that cost 7 figures? It wasn't luck. You don't get lucky for 300 years in a row. It wasn't magic. And it definitely wasn't some secret handshake with a shadow government. Here is the kicker. This is the part that most people miss because they are looking for complexity. Meyer didn't invent the system he used. He didn't sit down and write a new economic theory. He just downloaded it. He applied a set of principles that were already ancient by the time he was born. We are talking about wisdom found in the Babylonian Talmud, texts that are over 3,000 years old. Think about that for a second. Principles written 3 millennia ago, before the internet, before the New York Stock Exchange, before electricity. transformed a coin peddler into the biggest banking mogul in history. These aren't just good ideas or motivational quotes for your vision board. They are like a code, a software for prosperity that runs on the human operating system. And the craziest part, this code isn't hidden. It's not buried under a pyramid or locked in Area 51. It's right there. It's available. But most people ignore it because they're too busy looking for a get-rich-quick crypto coin, not realizing the blueprint for an empire has been sitting on the bookshelf for thousands of years. Hey, quick pause before we keep going deeper into this rabbit hole. If you're digging this deep dive into hidden history and wealth mindsets, if you want to know what the wealthy actually know while everyone else is guessing, do me a solid and hit that follow button on the channel right now. We're just getting started unlocking the Treasury. Okay, let's clear the air about the source material. I mentioned the Talmud, and I know that for a lot of people listening in the US, that sounds intimidating or purely religious. You might think, oh, that's a religious book, that's theology, I'm out. I'm here for money tips, not a sermon. But you have to shift your perspective. You have to put on a different pair of glasses. Yes, it is a sacred text for the Jewish people. But if you look at it objectively, it is also a massive, sprawling library of law, philosophy, debate, and, crucially, financial literacy. It was the survival guide for a group of people who often had to flee their homes with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the knowledge in their heads. When you are constantly being kicked out of countries, you learn very quickly what has value and what doesn't. You learn that land can be seized, gold can be stolen, but wisdom and principles travel with you. The Talmud doesn't just say, be a nice person. It gets into the weeds. It talks about how to handle contracts, how to treat employees so they don't steal from you, how to manage risk, and how to allocate assets so you don't lose everything in a market crash. It's practical, it's gritty, it's the original Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but written by sages in Babylon thousands of years ago. It teaches that money isn't evil, it's a tool. And like any tool, like a hammer or a chainsaw, if you don't know how to use it, you're going to hurt yourself. But if you master it, you can build something that lasts forever. There is a massive misconception in American society today. We are obsessed with luck. We love the lottery mentality. We look at a billionaire like Elon or Bezos and say, oh, right place, right time. We look at a Powerball winner and say, man, I wish I had that luck. But have you ever noticed what happens to lottery winners? Statistics show that about 70% of them go broke within a few years. They have the money, but they don't have the container for the money. They don't have the software. Sustainable, multi-generational wealth, the kind the Rothschilds built, is never an accident. That is architecture. The principles we are talking about act like laws of physics. They are like gravity. If you drop an apple, it falls. Gravity doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, a good person or a bad person. It just works. These financial laws are the same. Whether you are a coin seller in Germany in the 1700s or a software developer in Silicon Valley in 2024, if you apply the input, you get the output. Meyer Amschel Rothschild understood this. He stopped playing the game of chance and started playing the game of law. He aligned his business dealings with these ancient rules of flow, trust, and capital. He didn't try to beat the market. He tried to understand the human nature that drives the market. So, why does this matter to us today? Why should you care about what some guys in Babylon wrote down on scrolls? Because while the economy changes, technology changes, and the tools change, human nature stays exactly the same. The same fear and greed that existed in the marketplaces of ancient Babylon exist on Wall Street today. The same desire for security, the same temptation to overspend on luxury goods, the same need for community, it's all identical. That's why these principles work. They aren't based on the market trends of 1790. They are based on how human beings value things. We have access to this information. It's not locked in a vault. Yet, look around. Look at your friends. Look at your family. Most Americans are drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, stressed out of their minds. Why? Because they are trying to reinvent the wheel. They are ignoring the manual. We are going to break down a few of these concepts, the specific levers that turn a survival life into a legacy life. I have a serious question for you guys, and I want you to be honest in the comments. Do you believe wealth is mostly luck, being in the right place at the right time? Or do you think it's a learnable skill, like learning to cook or drive a car? I want to see your take below. Type luck or skill. Let me know what you think. Let's get into the specific mechanics. No more theory. Let's talk about what you actually do. The first major concept is something that feels completely backwards to the modern Western mind. It feels illogical. If I told you that the best way to get more water in your cup is to pour some of it out, you'd look at me like I'm crazy, right? You'd say, "No, Solomon, I need to hoard the water because I'm thirsty." But in the Treasury tradition and in the strategy of the Rothschilds, this is a non-negotiable law. It's the concept of tzedakah. Now in English, people translate this as charity, but that is a terrible translation. It's weak. Charity implies you're doing something nice because you feel bad for someone. It's emotional, it's spare change. Tzedakah comes from the Hebrew root for justice or righteousness. It's not a favor, it's an obligation. The idea is that money is energy. It's a current. That's literally why we call it currency. It has to flow. Think about the Dead Sea. Why is it dead? Because water flows in, but nothing flows out. It just sits there, evaporates, and becomes salty and toxic. If you hoard money, if you stop the flow, your finances stagnate. To keep fresh money coming in, you have to keep money going out to the right places. Most of us are raised with a scarcity mindset. It's hardwired into us. We think the pie is fixed. If I give you a slice of pizza, I have less pizza. That's true for pizza, but it is not true for value or wealth. The wealthy, the truly wealthy, understand that circulating wealth creates more opportunities. It's the difference between lighting a candle from another candle. When you use your flame to light someone else's, your light doesn't get dimmer. Now there is just more light in the room. When Meyer Rothschild or other successful figures applied this, they weren't just giving away money to be nice guys. They were investing in the stability of their world. They were building a safety net that would catch them if they fell. They were creating goodwill that is worth more than gold. When you are the person who feeds the community ensures you never starve. It's a selfishly selfless act. You give when it hurts. That's the key. Giving when you have millions is easy. Giving when you have nothing, that is powerful. It breaks the psychological hold of greed. It tells your brain, I am not a slave to this paper money. I control it. There is a specific number often attached to this, 10%, tithes. It shows up in Babylon. It shows up in the Bible. It shows up in almost every ancient tradition. But functionally, think about what doing this does to your brain. If you give away 10% of your income, gross, not net, you are sending a powerful signal to your subconscious. You're saying, I have more than enough. You're signaling abundance. And here is the weird thing. This principle works even when you have almost nothing. It's the spark plug. You don't wait until you are rich to be generous. You become generous to get rich. It sounds like woo-woo magic, but ask any high-level entrepreneur in New York or LA about the power of giving back or networking through providing value first, and they will tell you it's the highest ROI activity they have. It opens doors that money alone can't buy. I'm curious, have you ever experienced a moment where you gave something away, money, time, or maybe just advice, and it came back to you in a totally unexpected way later on? Share your story in the comments. I love reading those synchronicities. It proves the rule is real. The ancient texts mention something really interesting. You do it every day, but in the wrong order. What does that mean? It's not about what you are buying. It's about when you are buying it. It's about the order of operations in your financial life. Let's look at how the average American operates. Maybe this sounds familiar to you. You get your paycheck on Friday. Ding! Money in the account. What's the first thing you do? You pay the rent or mortgage, then the car payment for that SUV, then Netflix, Spotify, the gym membership you haven't visited in 3 months. Then you go to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. Then Saturday night comes around, you go out for drinks and dinner. You buy a new pair of sneakers because you saw an ad. Then at the very end of the month, on the last day, you look at your bank account and ask, okay, what is left over to save or invest? And guess what? There is never anything left over. That is the poor man's order. You are paying everyone else first. You pay the landlord, the grocer, the bartender, the government, the CEO of Netflix. You are the last person to get paid in your own life. You are literally working for everyone else. The Treasury principle and the wealth principle used by dynastic families flips this entirely upside down. The rule is simple but incredibly hard to follow. You pay your future self first, before the rent, before the food, before the fun. You allocate the capital for growth. This goes back to an ancient concept of allocating your assets into thirds. A third in land, real estate, a third in business, commerce, stocks, and a third liquid, cash on hand. The ratios might change in the modern world, but the discipline is the same. If you prioritize consumption, you will never build production. The Rothschilds didn't become kings of banking by spending their profits on fancy clothes initially. They reinvested. Compounding interest is the eighth wonder of the world, as Einstein reportedly said. But it needs fuel. It needs something to feed on. If you eat your seeds, you have nothing to plant next year. This requires massive discipline. It sucks in the short term. Let's be honest. It means saying no to the immediate pleasure for the sake of the long-term gain. It's delayed gratification. There is a story of a family I know, immigrants who came to America with nothing. When you are in that survival mode, every cent counts. It's tempting to spend every penny just to feel a moment of relief. But even then, the order matters. If you consume first, you remain a slave to your expenses. You are on the hamster wheel forever. If you invest first, even if it's a tiny amount, even if it's $50 into an index fund, you become the master of your assets. You are buying your freedom, $1 at a time. It's a subtle shift in the daily routine, but over 10, 20 or 30 years, the difference is retiring in the Hamptons versus working at Walmart when you're 80. Be honest with me here, no judgment. When you get your paycheck, what's the literally first thing you do? Do you pay a bill immediately, or do you move money to savings, investments immediately? Drop a comment below on how you handle payday. Are you paying yourself first or last? The transcript teased a Hebrew word that changed everything. While it didn't explicitly say it, in the context of Jewish wealth wisdom, that word is almost certainly related to emuna, faith, trust, or having a Shem Tov, a good name. Let's go back to the 1800s in Europe. There were no computers. There was no blockchain. There were no instant wire transfers. If you wanted to send money from London to Paris, you had to physically move gold or rely on a piece of paper that promised gold. How did the Rothschilds build a network across Europe, London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, Frankfurt, and move millions without getting ripped off? How did they beat the King of France to the news of the Battle of Waterloo? Absolute unbreakable trust. They operated on a code where your word was literally your bond. If a Rothschild said, "I will pay you," it was as good as gold bars in your hand. They treated their reputation as their most valuable asset on the balance sheet. In our modern American world, we've lost this. We think 50-page contracts and expensive lawyers protect us. We think we can hide behind anonymous usernames on Twitter. But the real deals, the ones that make millions, the ones that happen in private rooms in Manhattan or Silicon Valley, are still done based on reputation. If people know that you deliver, that you are honest, that you are solid, opportunities flow to you effortlessly. You don't have to chase them. This is a wealth rule people ignore. They burn bridges for a quick buck. They screw over a partner to save $1,000. They lie to a client to get the sale. That is short-term thinking. That is poverty thinking. Wealthy thinking is realizing that a good relationship is worth infinite money over a lifetime. The ancient wisdom emphasizes guarding your tongue and your integrity more than your gold. As it is written, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. Oh, why? Because if you have a good name, you can always make the riches back. If you lose your name, even if you have money, you are finished. No one will deal with you. This ties into the community aspect. The story we are following involves a family helping hundreds of others once they succeeded. This is the secret network. People think the Jewish banking network is a conspiracy. It's not. It's just cooperation. It's community leverage. When you lift others up, you create a network of allies. When you help your cousin start a business and he helps his neighbor and you all trade with each other, you create an ecosystem that is resilient to the outside world. The Rothschilds didn't operate alone. They operated as a unit in a hyper-individualistic world, especially in America where we are taught to be self-made men. We forget this. We try to be lone wolves. I can do it myself. But lone wolves starve. Packs survive. This is the secret language: cooperation, reputation, and trust. I want you to think about your circle. Who is one person in your life that you trust with your life? Tag them in spirit, or just tell me, do you think a handshake deal is still valid today, or is that old school nonsense? Let's discuss in the comments. Okay, we've talked about the Rothschilds, and they can feel like mythical characters, like characters in a movie. So let's bring it down to earth. Let's look at a real American story that proves these principles work today. There is a story of a family. Let's call them the Gurvitz family, based on a true account I read recently. It's the kind of story that makes your own problems feel a little smaller. The father came to the Americas fleeing the Holocaust. Just pause and think about the trauma of that. The loss, the absolute restart button being hit on your life. You arrive in a foreign country, you don't speak the language, you have no money, and you have the scars of war. The mother came from Egypt. Why? Because the government there decided to seize everything her family owned just because of their heritage. They took the house, the business, the accounts. She arrived with nothing. They didn't land in luxury. They landed in what we would call the slums. Picture a cramped walk-up apartment in the South Bronx or the tenements of the Lower East Side in the mid-century. This wasn't a vacation spot. It was gritty. It was hard. There were days they didn't have enough food on the table. They were living in what we would call poverty, real poverty. But, and this is the big but, they didn't stay there. They didn't accept that narrative. They didn't say, oh well, we are victims, the system is rigged against us. They applied the software. They applied these principles we just talked about. The giving, they shared what little they had with neighbors. The order, they saved pennies before they bought treats. The trust, they built a reputation in their community. And slowly, agonizingly slowly at first, the wheel started to turn. They went from that cramped apartment in the slums to owning real estate. They went from the gritty streets to the avenues of power. They moved from the bottom of the ladder to the very top. Think Park Avenue or the Upper East Side. From misery to prosperity. From needing help to be the ones who help hundreds of other families. The father taught these principles to his 8 children. This is the final key. Generational wealth isn't just leaving money to your kids. It's leaving the knowledge of how to make and keep money to your kids. If you leave your kids $10 million, but you don't teach them the principles, they will be broke in 10 years. We see it all the time with trust fund kids in New York and LA. But if you leave them the wisdom, the Treasury code, even if they start with zero, they can build the empire back up. The choice is yours. So, here we are. The video is almost over. You have two paths in front of you right now. Path 1, you can keep doing what you're doing. You can chase the trends, buy the things you don't need to impress people you don't like, and ignore the ancient laws of financial gravity. You can look at people like the Rothschilds and scream conspiracy, while staying exactly where you are, stuck in the rat race, waiting for a stimmy check or a lottery win. Path 2, you can do what that immigrant family did. You can humble yourself to learn the code. You can start applying the principles of the open hand, the right order, and the good name. It doesn't matter your age. The grandfather did it when he was old. The father did it when he was a teen. It doesn't matter where you start. You could be in a trailer park in Ohio, a tenement in the Bronx, or a rental in Detroit. The physics of wealth are the same everywhere. Most people ignore these rules because they are simple. They want complex, sexy answers. They want a secret algorithm. But the simple rules are the ones that build empires. We covered a massive amount of ground today. We went from ancient Babylon to the Swiss Alps, from the ashes of Europe to the skyscrapers of New York. If you got value out of this, if you felt that shift in your mindset, even just a little click, do not just click away. We are building our own tribe of wise builders right here. I want you to destroy that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next lesson, and share this video with someone who needs to wake up. Let's bring this ancient wisdom back into the light. See you in the next one. Peace.